So thanks for joining. I'm Mark Graben. I'm not going to be sharing any slides today. This isn't a webinar. I'm going to be showing you and demonstrating something instead. So I'm going to open two browser tabs and let me share that and jump right in. There we go. On the left is standard generic ChatGPT. That's the free version that most people have access to. On the right is the Lean Hospitals Coach. It's a custom AI tool that I built based on my book content, the book Lean Hospitals, and over 20 years of work in healthcare improvement. I'm going to type the same question into both ChatGPT and the Lean Hospitals Coach, and we're going to see what comes back. So this is a common challenge somebody working in continuous improvement might face. Our CEO and CFO want to use lean to reduce labor costs. Where should we start? There's a bit of an assumption built into that question. Let's what Chat GPT says. So, it starts off saying, look, the key is to not start by cutting people. Lean works best when you remove wasted work. That's a good start. But, let's scroll down here. I mean, it's almost exhaustively long. It's like a encyclopedia entry. Some of it is, again, pretty decent, but it's giving a lot of advice. It's telling us, to map the current state. Maybe we've already done that. It says run rapid improvement events. Maybe we're already doing this. I mean, it's just, giving a lot of information. It's a very detailed answer. Now, going over to the Lean Hospitals Coach, you can see at the bottom there are different modes. You can put it in Tell Me mode, which will give you facts. But I think most importantly, as we've got it now, you can put it into Coach Me mode. So I'm going to put that same question. I'm going to just copy and paste that. There's a little bit of efficiency on my part. We put that same question into the Lean Hospitals Coach. We don't get an encyclopedia. It asks a question, as I think we would expect an effective coach to do in the lean approach. So the Lean Hospitals Coach says, well, that starting point often creates friction between leadership and staff. What conversations have you had with frontline managers or staff so far? It wants, the coach is asking questions. It wants to understand what's actually happening behind this kind of general, broad question. It wants to understand before it gives advice. And when it does respond, it's I think going to be more helpful when it's interactive. So let's take a couple. Well, and somebody might say, well, I could just ask ChatGPT to coach me. And I've tried that. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. I told it to focus on questions and, it'll come back again with a sort of exhaustive and exhausting, list of 7 questions all at once with sub budget bullets and multiple choice options. And, the questions weren't bad, but I think if we think of how this would work in the real world, 7 questions in one response isn't coaching. That's an interrogation. ChatGPT has its strengths, but as you might say, it has no chill. A good coach asks one question, listens, and then asks the next question. It's catchfall, if you will. It's a back and forth, and that's the difference between a tool that can mimic the format of coaching and one that's actually built and trained to be a coach. So let me dig deeper with the Lean Hospitals Coach. So it asked us, what conversations have you had so far? And I'm going to type here, people are hearing cut heads, and I can never type when people are watching. The CFO showed benchmarks to the board, and now there's a labor cost target for Q3. And here's a general AI tip. You don't have to go back and correct your spelling, your typos. It will be able to navigate that. So nobody said the word layoff out loud, but that's what the hospital is hearing. So I'm going to hit enter and let's see what the coach comes back with. So it says when the staff hear benchmarks, they almost always hear layoffs, even if nobody says the word. Virginia Mason faced exactly this and had to make a public no layoffs commitment before real improvement could start. Now, that's pulling a fact and an example directly from my book, Lean Hospitals. And, I think maybe that's a appropriate thing to interject with. Now it's asking what chance do you have to influence that narrative within your department? We're getting one kind of targeted coaching question. I have some influence in I can really generally type way more accurately than this, but not much at the board level. And I'm using this in the role of a director VP. You can set the Lean Hospitals coach to interact with you as a C suite executive, frontline staff, improvement coach, other roles like that. So here I'm going to type. I've been thinking about running a new pilot that shows results without touching headcount, but I don't know if that buys me enough time. Let's see what Lean Hospitals coach comes back with. It says showing results with a no layoffs approach can work, but only if leadership is willing to say it out loud or act on it. What would it take to get the CEO or CFO to publicly state that no jobs will be cut due to lean work, at least in your pilot? Look at where we ended up. I started with they want us to reduce labor costs. And, three questions later, we're talking about not just, jumping to this pilot, but talking more about leading from the middle. I think the coach moved me from maybe the wrong problem to the right one. And, that's what coaching does. So let's try one other scenario. And again, we're going to demonstrate the Lean Hospitals coach tool based on questions and scenarios you want to share with me. I'm going to go back to ChatGPT and say, okay, new situation. I'm going to start with the big, broad statement. We hear this a lot in hospitals. Patient satisfaction scores are terrible. Might be a true statement, but it's pretty broad and pretty vague. And now ChatGPT is saying, well, lean can be effective. The approach is different than using lean purely for cost reduction. And, my goodness, it starts just again sharing so much advice and it's telling us what to do. And it might be telling us things we already know because ChatGPT and tools like this Claude and Gemini and Copilot, they're going to give basically mathematically average responses to what it thinks the average user in. So look, there's this long list. None of it's based on knowing anything about you or your hospital. So let me ask that same question of the Lean Hospitals coach. Just copy and paste that. New situation. Patient satisfaction scores are terrible. It's thinking. And it says patient satisfaction touches everything. That's true. That's a lot to work with at once. Where is it hurting most? So, in my experience, this is doing what I would expect a great lean coach to do. It's taking this big, vague concern, as it might be called, and we want to narrow down or try to break down the problem. So, I'm going to answer and say, well, where's it hurting most in the ED in the emergency department? And I think if I answered A&E based on my context in a different country with different terminology, it would be fine. And now it says, okay, what does the data show? Is there a specific survey question dragging the score or is it across the board? And I'm going to say, okay, waiting times is the biggest complaint. We're going to let it respond. So we've got people here also from Turkey and Nigeria and Brazil, the UK, Iowa. Thank you for being here. And so again, it's prompting us, narrowing the problem, trying to get to a better problem definition, which I think is more helpful again than ChatGPT trying to show off how much it knows about lean in healthcare. So, okay, where in the process are patients spending the most time waiting? I'm going to say waiting for inpatient beds, about 25 patients waiting up to 3 days. I'm going to see what the coach responds with here. What happens after the medical decision is made? Is the delay in bed assignment, transport, or something else? I'm going to say, well, the problem, and this is based off a real scenario that I was helping a hospital with up in the northern part of Ontario, Canada at one point. We don't have rehab or nursing home capacity in our region. That's out of our control. Now, this is a true statement, but it's sort of pointing fingers at something outside the organization instead of addressing. And so it says, that frustration makes sense. What is one thing inside your walls that you've not looked at yet? And I was going to wrap up here. I'm going to say one thing that somebody might say when if they get frustrated, if they're new to this style of coaching. Why are you asking me so many questions? Let's see what comes up. It says, my job is to develop your thinking, not hand you a solution. The questions are the work. And now it's saying what happens between, so it's asking a process related question. I think that's the key. The questions are the work. That's the difference between a tool that dumps answers at you and one that actually coaches. Multiple questions later, we're talking about the process flow and system constraints and what have I seen or not seen for myself. The coach didn't give me a long answer. It gave me, I think, a better understanding of the problem. So that's what I wanted you to see first. And before I explain a little bit about what this is and how I built it, I wanted you to watch it work because I think the difference is immediate. I think it's obvious, and you can run experiments like this on your own. So, for some quick context, the Lean Hospitals coach is grounded in my books, including the book Lean Hospitals and 20 years of experience that I have helping people with healthcare improvement work. I've also trained it, the AI model, on coaching and improvement frameworks that actually work in healthcare. It's built to think and interact with you like a lean coach, not a search engine. And that means the lean hospital coach isn't going to give blanket recommendations like, you should always implement 5S as the first step. It won't treat lean as a project. It won't blame frontline workers for system problems. And it'll push back on you if you slip into blaming or when the question itself is the problem. So here's a question we're thinking about real quick. What's the cost of receiving confidently wrong advice? I mean, when you ask ChatGPT a lean question and it gives you this, polished, articulate, but maybe completely misguided answer, and you don't know enough to catch it, that's not a free tool. That's an expensive mistake that you didn't see coming. So I'm going to give a brief pitch. There is a founder membership available right now. You can get early access at a price that won't last long. It's going to be available to the first 50 people who sign up. You can do that at leanhospitalsbook.com/coach. And if you want to test it first, there is a free 48-hour trial period available, and you can access that. All you have to do is enter your email address, no credit card needed. Go to leanhospitalsbook.com/start. You get the full blown lean coach system. It's not dumbed down. It's not limited. You get to use it for 48 hours. So I'm gonna close ChatGPT. I don't think we need that anymore. We're gonna focus on the lean hospital coach. And so I want to hear from you. I'm going to pull up the comments here. We've got people, again, from many, many countries, Peru, Nigeria. Welcome to everybody from around the world. So this is the part where you can put me and the Lean Hospitals coach on the spot. If there's a question you would want to ask the Lean Hospitals coach, put it in the LinkedIn comments. A real challenge that you're dealing with, if that's about understaffing, a stalled lean initiative, leaders who think lean means layoffs or cost cutting, a team that's burned out on improvement, whatever it is, put that in the comments and I'll put it into the coach live and we'll see together what happens. And if you don't want to share your question here, that's what the 48-hour free trial is for. You can put your own question in at leanhospitalsbook.com/start. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay in these comments coming through. Let me see what might be. No, the LinkedIn view isn't pulling that up, but I've got some questions that I can use as a starting point. And again, I would love you to submit questions you want. And as soon as I put in one of my own questions, something will probably come in from the audience as these things tend to go. All right. So I am in the Lean Hospitals coach. I'm going to just start a new chat. Still working as a director VP. Actually, here, let me change the mode. I'm going to do, okay, C-suite mode. So now, some of the answers are tailored on the level of detail, and what it does is going to be based on the role. Okay, here's a question that came in. Thank you for submitting that. How do we begin the process of checking to see if we're utilizing capacity correctly in a wound care center? So that context might help with the response we get. Let's see what the Lean Hospitals coach comes up with. It says, using capacity correctly is one of those phrases that sounds clear, but can mean a dozen different things depending on the situation. What do you see today that makes you suspect you're not using capacity well? And I'd invite the person who submitted this question, if you want to have a more interactive chat, you can do so on the free trial, but I'm going to put in an answer. We have a lot of empty beds and staff are sometimes scheduled when we don't have enough patients. We'll see what it comes up with. Staffing to demand is always tricky. Too many people and you burn money, too few and morale tanks. What does your data show about patient volumes by day and time? Do you have clear patterns or is it unpredictable? So it's probing, it's asking, it's trying to help us define a better, more specific, quantified problem statement. Oh, okay, the same reply. Very similar to what I guess. Empty rooms, patient waiting. Now I want to demonstrate. You see down here, we have a toggle coach me, tell me mode. I'm going to take that same question and see. Oh, it's okay. Expensive equipment is idle. All right. So now tell me mode is going to do exactly that. Not as long of an answer as ChatGPT or a tool like that might give. It's saying, okay, well, here's an approach you could take. Establish your demand pattern, match staffing to demand, examine causes of imbalance, test small changes. Now, there are two other modes down here. Book search that stays very closely to the book Lean Hospitals, and Book Plus that draws on broader lean information that I've curated and tried to set some boundaries around. So it cites the Toyota Kata approach, which I like. And so it's giving some advice. Would you like some examples? I'm going to put it back in coach mode and say, okay, back to coaching. Scheduling is erratic as well. Start there. Now, I'm guessing it might ask, well, what do you mean by erratic? Let's see. Okay. Well, it says, well, yeah. So it's stepping back to what's the process today? Who decides the schedule and how far in advance? I think these are good coaching questions. And especially when we're wanting a coach instead of an answer person, I think the Lean Hospitals coach is a great alternative to general AI chatbots and tools. You can see if anyone else has other questions, feel free to put those in. I'm going to try another one that comes up a lot. How do I, and this is asking again as a C level, how do I get nurses to stop making medication errors? So if you're experienced with lean, you might say, well, there's blame and finger pointing. And the lean coach says, well, jumping to how do I get nurses to stop usually points to pressure for fast fixes. When a nurse makes a medication error, what actually happens next? Who responds? And what is the immediate reaction? I'm going to answer, and let's say if I'm a CNO or another chief executive or a C-level officer, it says, well, okay, it doesn't scold me for not knowing. It says that's actually a useful starting point. What's the closest you have gotten to seeing a medication error invested in your organization? You might say, like, well, that's delegated to my leaders and the quality department. Okay, we have another chat question that came in. I'll put that in the coach mode. It says, delegating inquiry is common, but it can also mean executives lose sight of system level causes. What reports or summaries, if anything, do you see from those investigations? And then I might reflect, maybe I should go and observe RCA for myself. It says, oh, well, that would move you much closer to what's actually happening. What would be your first question if you were in the room watching one of those RCAs unfold? So again, I think, it's not just robotically spitting a question back. Like, I think something unsophisticated would answer this question of maybe I should go and observe RCA for myself. It might reply and say, what do you think? Like, well, this question I think is a lot more helpful. All right, so here's something else somebody submitted. We can do maybe one or two more of these. How can trust within a hospital be strengthened so that more employees participate in the continuous improvement process? And again, like I have this habit, I want to go back and fix my typos. AI can figure it out. It's not going to judge me. Okay, so it says, trust grows from what leaders do when problems are raised, not from statements or training. When you think about your hospital, where do you see trust breaking down most visibly? Again, like, ChatGPT would have given us a big giant laundry list of tips and tactics and things to do. And maybe if the LinkedIn user, how would you answer this question? If you want to put that in the chat, where do you see trust breaking down most visibly? I think the coach is asking us to define a little bit more precisely what is meant by trust. So I'm going to say trust, it's lacking, I think, because people aren't submitting tickets to our improvement process. I think they're afraid to speak up in huddles from what I see. Okay, so I'm going to try to say something that's not so much of a guess, but look at what I see. If people are holding back in huddles and not submitting ideas, that's usually ambivalence, not defiance. And ambivalence is a term that means, if they have reasons to participate, they have reasons not to. That's different than resistance to change. The Lean Hospitals coach is specifically trained not to accept resistance to change as a reason or a root cause. It's going to push and probe. When was the last time someone did raise a problem in a huddle? What happened next? And how did the leader respond? So this is what I think a coach does. And look, as you're using it and trialing it, and again, I would encourage you, you can try this for free at leanhospitalsbook.com/start, 48 hours. You can subscribe at leanhospitalsbook.com/coach. But, as you're trying this out, and if it gives an answer that's off, one thing I think of is, AI isn't a magic box. It's a starting point, hopefully to help improve your thinking. The best way to use it is the same way you'd work with a human coach. You bring your real situation, push back on what it says, use it to sharpen your own thinking. And before I wrap up in a couple of minutes, one thing that I really enjoyed doing the other day was asking the Lean Hospital's AI coach to do a role play back and forth. And it would throw me a scenario, and then I would respond, and it would do the role play, but then it would also interject with feedback, coaching to my coaching. And I thought that was actually really insightful. I jumped to a why question really quickly, and the coach didn't scold me, but it reminded me that why questions can trigger defensiveness, and that maybe a better response would have started asking more what questions, like, well, what do we know about the process? What have you seen? Digging and probing before looking or trying to ask someone to jump to a root cause. I think that's good A3 problem solving, if you will. So I want to leave you with one thought, and I encourage you, if you've got other comments or questions, put them in the chat. If you're watching the recording, I'm going to go back and try to reply to these. You can also send me a LinkedIn message, or you can email me, mark@markgraven.com. But I want to leave you with one thought as we wrap up here. I think most of us have experienced a moment where someone new to Lean types a question into Google, and it comes back with an answer that's technically about Lean, but maybe philosophically a bit wrong. The tools show up, but the respect for people isn't there. The system thinking gets flattened into a long bullet point to-do list. Generic AI has that same problem, but sometimes it's faster and more convincing. So the question I'll leave you with isn't, should I use AI for Lean? But what assumptions is your AI carrying that you haven't examined yet? So again, if you want to test that for yourself, use whatever tool you have access to. ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, or others. Sign up for the free 48-hour trial at leanhospitalsbook.com/start. Put your toughest scenarios in, look at the different responses, and see if what I've built and continue to refine here thinks the way a good coach would. So I want to thank you for spending 30 minutes with me. If you've got other questions I didn't get into, other reactions or comments or feedback, please feel free to share them in the comments, or you can reach out to me here through LinkedIn, mark@markgraven.com, or if you sign up for the free trial, you can send feedback. Let me go back to the screen share one last time. If you're using the tool here, there's the three-dot menu. You can share feedback, and you can share it with your email address if you want me to reply, or you can send it anonymously. But it's very early stages still, I think, of this technology and the opportunities to continue dialing in and tuning models like this. I've done a lot of iteration with this platform, and I think it's getting better. And if you tell me responses that seem off or opportunities to make this tool better, that's going to be very much appreciated. There's a question from Deanna, joining from manufacturing in Indiana. I've had some Toyota Kata training through people from the Toyota system, and I'm really interested in seeing how this AI coaching approach is used in healthcare. This is two thoughts come to mind. This is framed as a Lean Hospitals coach. I think it's interesting to put scenarios from other industries in there. One way I might need to pivot is maybe this is a Lean coach and not only a Lean Hospitals coach. There is a lot built into the system related to the Kata methodology, and you can actually go and tell it Kata mode. And it says, starting improvement Kata coaching, we will work through the 4 questions together, one at a time. And it starts off with, what is the challenge that you want to work on? So that's a framework. Deanna or others, I would love to have you go kick the tires on that, if you will, try it out, see how helpful it might be. And again, I would love to hear feedback from you or anybody else. So thank you for that, Deanna. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but thank you everybody for tuning in today. Thank you for questions. Those of you who gave some sample use cases here. And again, no catch, no commitment, no credit card. If you want to go try this out for yourself with your own situations, whether you're from healthcare, different countries, different industries. And a tip for those of you from other countries, you can interact with the Lean Hospitals coach in your language. So I know we have people here who speak Spanish and Portuguese and other languages. I've had friends of mine in the Netherlands do testing in Dutch. I've got somebody I know who tested it in Japanese. It will reply in whatever language you're interacting with. So I think that's a cool opportunity. My book, Lean Hospitals, has been translated into 8 different languages, but it's not available to people who speak other languages. I'm really excited to see what this brings as an opportunity to help share some of these ideas with people around the world. So again, I'm Mark Graben. Thank you for tuning in today to watch live, or if you're watching the recording, certainly wish you the best in all of the improvement work that you're leading and that you're involved in. Thanks again.